Hello there.
Welcome back to another episode of Star Wars in a Galaxy, watching all the Star Wars we can get our hands on. We are back, actually recording with each other for the first time in a few months now. This is episode 59. I'm Eli.
I'm Jacob.
And you heard it right, folks. He's back. Jacob is finally back. We're finally recording again. This feels like a long time in the making.
It has been a long time coming. I'm very glad to be back. Let's get to it.
Before we get to it, though, due to changes in Jacob and my schedules recently, we are going to change In a Galaxy from recording weekly to recording bi-weekly. So expect a new In a Galaxy episode every 2 weeks. We want to go back to recording as weekly as soon as possible, and we will as soon as our schedules free up a little bit. But yeah, back to episode 59 of Star Wars in Galaxy. We watched 3 The Clone Wars episodes today from season 4, A Friend in Need, the standalone episode, and the start of what I call the Undercover Obi-Wan arc, Deception and Friends and Enemies.
And A Friend in Need. Lux and Ahsoka are reunited. Lux confronts the Separatist Council. He barges into negotiations, actually, confronts the Separatist Council, airs out all the dirty laundry, says Dooku murdered my mother in cold blood. He's taken away. Dooku, he has a little Skype call on the old hologram with Dooku. Dooku's very unhappy with him, obviously. And Dooku's about to have him killed, but Ahsoka comes and rescues Lux. However, Lux then betrays Ahsoka and goes to the planet of Karlak to meet up with the Death Watch, because he's made a deal with the Death Watch to give the Death Watch information that they will help use, or that they will use to help kill Dooku with him. However, there's some drama with the Death Watch. The Death Watch attack an innocent village. Ahsoka fights them. It's revealed that she's a Jedi. There's a lot of fighting. Eventually they escape, and Lux kind of reconsiders his allegiance to the Death Watch, and that is pretty much that.
Yeah.
Did I miss anything?
I don't think so. This episode's fortune cookie is friendship shows us who we really are. What do you think about that?
I think it is definitely true for this episode. I'm not sure if it's the most relevant fortune cookie they could have chosen, but I think it does have a lot to unpack. Lux's friendship with Ahsoka ends up kind of helps him save himself, because he has to be more focused in the end on saving Ahsoka and on helping her than on killing Dooku. So in that way, I guess Ahsoka's friendship helps remind Lux that, being out for revenge, trying to murder people, that isn't really who he is.
Absolutely.
And so I think that's one way that we kind of see this fortune cookie being born out. I'm not sure. I'm forgetting the other example, but yeah, that's one way we kind of see it.
Absolutely, I agree. I think this is a very Star Wars fortune cookie. I actually quite enjoy this fortune cookie much more than the other two. I feel like, the villains are constantly threatened by the heroes' friendships.
Yeah.
You see that. I think I referenced this on one of the Between Themes episodes. You see that frown from Palpatine when he goes, "Your friends." And then he goes this very ghastly frown, and because the idea of having a friendship is so foreign to him.
Yeah.
And I love this, and I love the the idea that Ahsoka here is, as Lux will later say in the episode of Warp on Two Fronts, from making a terrible mistake. Friends care about each other, but they're also honest with each other.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really interesting sentiment. Want to get into the episode?
Yeah, let's dive right in. What do you got?
Okay, so first we gotta dive into a logistical problem. Okay, You have the Republic and the Separatists meeting for a peace conference.
Yes.
You can choose any planet for them to meet for a peace conference on. And you choose Mandalore.
Yeah.
Why, I ask you? Why Mandalore?
I mean, Mandalore is traditionally, or not traditionally, but I guess Mandalore does serve as neutral ground.
Okay,
and
sure.
Mandalore is very, Satine, obviously, she's very used to Mandalore being neutral. So, in that way, I think it makes sense.
It makes sense as a neutral planet, except for the fact that, we see in Season 2 of the Clone Wars, there are, like, dozens of other neutral planets that they could have gone to that don't have warrior tribes constantly trying to fight off everybody. And, aren't in metropolitan big cities where anybody could just burst in and interrupt them like Lux inevitably does.
Yeah, that is a fair point.
I'd say the story needs it to. The story doesn't need it to. Most of the story doesn't take place on Mandalore at all. Yeah, it's so.
Yeah, that's a fair point. It is a bit odd when you think about it. But I think, I don't think it had very much thought put into it. I don't really think it needs too much thought put into it.
Yeah.
In my opinion, it is what it is.
It just seemed a little odd to me that they put a peace conference on Mandalore, which will, by the time the show completes, have 3 separate civil wars on that planet.
Yeah.
More conflicts on Mandalore shown in the series than on any other planet.
Really? Wow. That's just impressive for the Clone Wars. Like, I have my problems with the Mandalorians, but you can't even be mad at that point. That's just dedication. Like, you want to have some wars, you better go all out, and that is exactly what Mandalore.
Absolutely.
That is what Mandalore does.
Yeah. I also want to ask you another question. And I'm really curious about this one. This is not me criticizing the story. I'm just very curious about this. How could the Separatists arrest Lux so easily? It's neutral territory. Lux doesn't actually do anything. There's no destruction of property. There's no, violent threats. There's no violence at all. I didn't know you could arrest somebody for slander.
I think I have a couple theories about that. I think, as we kind of know, like, obviously it's very hard to make these sit-downs between the Republic and the Separatists happen. We see them kind of, they try to happen and they fall apart a couple times throughout the Clone Wars. So I think maybe the Mandalorian authorities, they probably have some vested interest in making sure that this meeting goes well, hosting it and all. So I think that they don't want to do anything to jeopardize that. It is also possible that because Lux is seen as a separatist, and because he's seen as like a member of the Separatists, it's possible that somehow maybe they don't even view it as a hostile arrest. Maybe they just think, oh, it's just drama. So I think that could be a possibility. It's not a very good. It's not a very good.
You actually just gave me another thought, actually, which is that given that Lux is still considered as a separatist, I wonder if they had him arrested on the grounds of treason.
Yeah, I think they even said, like, one of the dudes even called him a traitor.
Yeah,
one of the Separatist Council members. So clearly they're not taking this lightly.
Absolutely, they're not. Okay, here's actually something interesting I thought about this episode. Did you think of the episode Trespass when you were thinking of this episode?
Remind me again which episode Trespass is?
It's the one in Season 1 with the Pantorans on the moon.
Yeah, I have to say it didn't really remind me of that one a whole lot.
The parallels, for me at least, are striking.
Oh, how so?
It's a standalone episode. I think both episodes are very good quality. And they both have a snowy planet. They have a new-ish society introduced to us, new characters introduced to us. And they both have they have very similar kind of narrative structures where both times there's a character who needs to realize what they've done wrong. It's actually a concept I made up. I didn't make this up. I just made up the term, which is a very Star Wars thing to do: repent or regret.
What do you mean by that?
If a character's on a path where they're doing things wrong, they have two options: repent, see the error of their ways, and learn to do better. I have some Clone Wars-esque examples. Of course, Lux in this episode. Ventress is a good example. Dendup, the king of Onderon in the Onderon arc. Or regret. Double down, eventually regret the consequences. Chicho, who's the prime minister of the Pantorans, who eventually gets killed for engaging in a war that should not happen in the first place, but he's too stubborn to see it. Maul, who fails to realize that Obi-Wan was defending himself and that all of this revenge he's seeking is pretty much made up and in his head, and keeps going down like Sisyphus, pushing up the rock, up the hill, and then falling back down. Or like the father, who sees the error of his ways, but a little too late, like before his daughter's gone, and his son is just going rampaging on Mortis.
Yeah.
Repent or regret.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the Star Wars definitely. We do see this a lot. I think especially in the Clone Wars, Star Wars has a way of, they say no good deed goes unpunished. For Star Wars, I think no bad deed goes unpunished. Like, especially in maybe not in things like The Mandalorian, but in the Clone Wars, in all the mainline movies, in the main saga, it's very much about kind of that moral compass and that good versus evil fight, which basically says if you engage in evil, if you do something to hurt others that is wrong and hurtful, like, it will bite you in the butt and it will corrupt you, and that corruption will be your downfall. We see that with Palpatine. We see that with Vader and Palpatine, for example. That's a great example. They're both complicit in horrible, horrible things that they do together. But at the very end, Vader kind of repents, and, well, he does get killed by Force lightning, but, he does get redeemed.
He saves his son.
Yeah, versus Palpatine, who, again, doubles down at every turn, just chooses to cause more hurt and more pain.
Yeah, and what happens to him? He dies on the second Death Star. He tries to come back, but then he's killed by his own granddaughter, who then rejects his name and takes the name of his mortal enemy.
Yeah.
Repent or regret?
100%.
Yeah. Anything you have for this episode before we get on to the planet of Karlak?
No, I think we can go right on to Karlak.
So we gotta cover, I think, the Sarlacc in the room.
The Sarlacc in the room.
The thing that's going to swallow us up if we don't talk about this. And I gotta talk about one of my favorite characters, and I know one of your least favorite characters in Star Wars. Lady Bo-Katan of House Kryze. Here's a fun little trivia fact about this episode. Did you know when this episode released, this character was not named Bo-Katan, and Dave Filoni did not have connection to the Kryze family at all?
Wow, I did not know that.
The character was so popular as Pre Vizsla's right-hand woman that they gave her a backstory afterwards, and now she's live action.
Oh, that's so cool. So, like, over time, they kind of retro-engineered her to be a much bigger character than was originally intended. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. I didn't know that.
One of the biggest crimes of this episode, and I love this episode so much, is, I think, its underutilization of Bo-Katan. I like, Bo doesn't do enough, I feel like.
Also.
I mean, she plays a very Boba Fett role, actually, where she just stands there and looks cool, says a few
Yeah,
lines every
definitely.
once in a while. But I would have, and I still want to.
Yeah, she has a lot of like little one-liners, I'd say.
Yeah, I still want, but I wanted to see. I wanted to know Bo before she started to see the error of her ways. I wanted to see what she was like as a person, because every time we see Bo afterwards, it's her starting to realize the error of her ways.
I would argue that she never really realizes the error of her ways, but that's a topic for another time. I think in this, she certainly doesn't see the error of her ways, but again,
Oh,
she's
absolutely,
kind of
she
a
does
little.
not. No.
She's like a side. She's like a side character. Like in this, she definitely feels more of like a episode 5 Boba or like a Captain Phasma.
Absolutely.
You know, like someone who looks, yeah, as you said, looks cool. Maybe not the most important to the story.
Absolutely.
And that's okay. That isn't necessarily.
It is okay. Yeah.
That's not necessarily always a bad thing. Obviously, we have so that can lead to some pretty interesting things.
Absolutely.
As we see with Bo-Katan, as we see with Boba Fett.
It can. Another thing I realized, by the way, did you realize that one of the first interactions between Jon Favreau and Katee Sackhoff was on this episode?
Really?
Because Favreau was Vizsla and Sackhoff was Bo-Katan. Before The Mandalorian.
I didn't know Jon Favreau played Pre-Vizsla. That's so cool.
So that's a fun one. Another thing before I ask for your thoughts. The scene with R2-D2, that first scene with R2-D2 and the droids.
Yeah.
Was that meant to be like a horror type scene? Because it was really creepy.
It was very creepy. I felt like I'm not sure exactly if it was like, and forgive me if I'm totally wrong, because I haven't seen this movie in like 10 years or something. But it kind of reminded me of Toy Story when there were the broken toys or something in Toy Story. Maybe I'm.
I haven't seen those in a long time, so I'm blanking on
completely
myself.
Off base, but it really reminded me. I know something about that scene screamed reference. Like it definitely to me felt like it was referencing something else, but I don't know what it was referencing. So
and it was odd. It was an odd subplot because like they're like, come help us, and you're like, oh no, he's in trouble. And then the next time he fixed them all, and now they're going to help him.
Yeah,
like the two stories seems disjointed for some weird reason.
Well, in a way, I think that kind of reflects the title of this of the episode a little bit. Like friendship shows who we really are. You know, obviously, R2-D2, he's a hero because he takes like a bad situation and he actually fixes the droids. He doesn't get scared. He doesn't get hostile. But he takes a risk and yeah, he takes a risk to help others when he could have tried to just stay safe and not get hurt, and that ends up paying off for him.
Yeah, it's a really, but
I think in a way it's kind of fitting for this episode. I'd say
it is kind of fitting. I just wish they set it up a little bit better because it was leading somewhere else.
You thought it was leading somewhere else?
I thought it was leading to where R2 was gonna have to fight his way through those droids because because they were surrounding him really weirdly, like some horror scene.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I thought they did an okay.
Yeah,
I thought they did a fine job of setting it up.
I
didn't really think it was a big problem, but I guess it did feel a little bit like it could have gone. Definitely could have gone in a different direction as well. I agree.
By the way, let's talk about Ahsoka's, like, oh my god, such a savage line right here. Here's your soup. Careful not to choke on your stupidity.
Yeah. Bro, Ahsoka goes off in this episode.
Ahsoka goes off. I love when Ahsoka goes off.
I love that she gets to just kind of like give like Lux is just trying to like use her for his own ends, and he's trying to kind of not like kind of mistreat her or kind of walk all over her, and she's like no.
Yeah.
I'm Ahsoka Tano. She's like I'm a Jedi or Jedi Padawan, I guess. She'd probably say I'm a Jedi.
Yeah.
I'd say she's a Jedi, Padawan or not.
Yeah. Disregard the scene from Rebels, whatever.
Disregard all the stuff from Rebels. I love Ahsoka in this. She really kind of
absolutely
steps up and claims the respect that she deserves, and she stands up.
Yeah. But then there's a part of her. You see, there's a part of her when like right before they hand back the women to the village. There's a part of her that actually wants to believe that Death Watch is not as bad as she thought it was.
Yeah, I think that speaks to her optimism. That's kind of that's kind of the Jedi way. No one is above redemption.
Yeah, at least that's Ahsoka's way. I'm not sure if that's the Jedi way of this time, as we'll get to
maybe not of this time, but I think maybe overall
the core Jedi way.
I think it's the overall kind of the spirit of the light side, like Luke Skywalker, obviously choosing to redeem Palpatine, stuff like that.
Yeah,
maybe it's more of a light side thing. I don't know. But you kind of get what I mean.
I know I get what you mean. Yeah. You have anything from this first part on Karlak other than your hatred for Bo-Katan?
Maybe hatred is a strong. Maybe hatred is a.
Yeah, I don't want Meg Dowell to angrily at us again for this.
That was awesome. I love getting some love on Twitter. That was a lot of fun. I thought Bo-Katan was cool. Obviously felt a little mad for Ahsoka. She was kind of getting verbally and physically disrespectful towards Ahsoka. So I think I kind of, as a Bo-Katan skeptic, I think I don't really have to say a lot for this episode. But
this episode is your strongest argument as a Bo-Katan skeptic.
It's one of my strongest. I think my
stands by as a village is murdered.
And I think it's okay to like characters who do bad stuff. That's not my point. But I think I'd say the strongest argument for my kind of skepticism of the way Bo-Katan is being handled is that we never really see any attempt at redemption. Like every moment when she ends up fighting one of the other villains, or one of the villains, because I guess she's now kind of being positioned as maybe like an anti-hero or a neutral force, is the fact that she only does it because she disagrees with them, not because she realizes that they're doing something wrong. And maybe we'll see that change. I'm excited to see where they take her in The Mandalorian. So it's never too late to make me change my mind.
I think The Mandalorian is going to change a lot of things about how we view Bo's past actions.
Yeah, I definitely feel like there's still
wherever they go.
There's probably a lot of missing pieces. I mean, I definitely think there's missing pieces to the puzzle of Bo-Katan and who she is as a character. And I'm excited to see those get unfurled. This kind of reminded me of how far she's come, but also I think how far she has to go as a character and how far I think they still can push her. Because I feel like we haven't really seen Bo-Katan go out of her comfort zone. That's what I would say. The plot hasn't really pushed her to question her ways.
Though then again,
that would put it in a really interesting place.
I would argue, actually, we have seen Bo-Katan pushed out of her comfort zone, but we don't know how she's reacted to it yet.
Oh, how so?
When Din gets the Darksaber.
Yeah, that's true.
That is Bo being pushed out of her comfort zone for one of the first times in the story.
She really wants, she sees it as her birthright, I guess, kind of.
Yeah. And so she knows.
Definitely.
And she knows Din doesn't care.
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is, he defeated Gideon, not her. So it's going to be this really strange, I've heard speculation about Bo being an antagonist in season 3 of The Mandalorian. Not necessarily bad, but opposing to Din's objectives. Because, again, Din has the Darksaber, and Bo doesn't. So, and that's the one thing she wants more than anything. She wants the leadership position. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. You definitely have a point there.
Yeah.
So that's gonna be again, who knows where they're gonna go. It'll definitely be interesting.
Absolutely.
But yeah, this definitely shows kind of what I think is like the underlying the dark, or I guess you could say like one of the dark sides of Mandalorian culture, or the way that like it's interpreted by some Mandalorians, and like a lot of the villains in general in Star Wars. Like always this thing of the weak should rule the strong. Everything has to be super hierarchical. And I think what I like about Star Wars is that one of the core messages throughout all of Star Wars is kind of rejecting the idea that the weak should fear the strong.
Yeah,
And I
absolutely.
think I like and always having the heroes are the ones who stand. And I guess this isn't just unique to Star Wars, but like the heroes are those who choose to kind of
Stand up for the weak.
stand up for those who can't stand up for themselves, and also to kind of reject the idea of like that there needs to be a hierarchy.
Yeah.
And I think one of the problems with the Jedi and how they lose their way is they, in their own way, in the Clone Wars, they kind of fall victim to that. We kind of see them subconsciously kind of buy into this hierarchical mentality with the way that they kind of treat. It's like just watching the way that they treat like non-Jedi.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I want to talk about this one shot. When Vizsla says, "Welcome to Death Watch," that shot is one of my favorite shots.
Oh yeah,
probably
so
in the
good.
season. Yeah,
that's right after they burn the village, right?
They're right after they burn the village.
Yeah.
Fire with snow. You already have the harsh environment, which is the snow, but then they added fire to it, and it's contrasting. Basically, welcome to Death Watch, Lux. You really screwed yourself on this one.
Yeah, I think they do a great job. Obviously that shot in particular, I love it because it kind of it shows. I don't know. It feels like a cool device how it shows maybe a little bit of Lux's thought process as well. Like, oh, this is the Death Watch, and they kind of make sure to hammer the point home. With that shot being at the moment as it is, of like this is the Death Watch. Like this is what you're choosing. Like you may want this because of Dooku, and you may want this like because of you think you want it for the right reasons to join with them. But whether you like it or not, this is what you're like getting involved in. This is what you're endorsing. Basically, this is like, yeah, this is what you're doing.
Absolutely. There's also that thing with after the attack, where Lux says to Vizsla, "I believed you had honor, but you're just murderers." And then Pre Vizsla does the false equivalency stuff that dark side people often do, where he goes, hey, look, you're driven by revenge on Death Watch. I'm sorry, you're driven by revenge on Dooku. So are we. And Dooku and the Jedi aren't that different.
But I think he kind of has a point also. Sorry, go ahead. I'll save it for when you're done.
Dooku and the Jedi aren't that different at the end of the day. So, by the law of averages, you should be against the Jedi.
Yeah, yay. I think he actually does have a point though when he's saying like, because I think he kind of has a point though, because he kind of tells Lux like, hey, at the end of the day, you're out for revenge too, and I think that is kind of Lux's wake up call, of being like, oh wait, like at the end of the day, I also want to kill someone. I also am like, that is my primary goal, and I'm like making sacrifices, making betrayals to make that happen.
I agree with you.
So I think that in a way, he may not be totally. I think from his own perspective and for his own sake, he might be very wrong. That is, but I think in terms of it is kind of, even though he is very wrong, he is also right in that he is saying, even though he's saying it for the wrong reasons, he is saying exactly what Lux needs to hear.
I think you're right. I think, in that statement, except for the "you should be against the Jedi" part, there's nothing that Vizsla says that's wrong. It's just the context of how you take it. There's nothing that Vizsla says that's false. It's just how you perceive what he says. Because, the Jedi aren't that different from Dooku. But that's not saying that Dooku, that the Jedi are bad and Dooku is bad, and what's the difference? Is that the Jedi have lowered themselves to Dooku's level beyond the Clone Wars. In a more meta sense, you've talked a lot about Jedi losing their way. This is a good example of that. Vizsla unintentionally says something pretty true. I also love, jumping to the end of the episode, I love this uncertain ending. I love that not everything is fixed at the end. I love that Lux doesn't know where he's going to turn next. One of my wishes is that we could have gotten one of Lux in between this episode and War on Two Fronts, where we see him on Onderon. Because he's unsure about his destiny in this. And then in War on Two Fronts, he's like, so now I'm an Onderonian freedom fighter. And it's just it feels a little bit jarring to, it feels like he found his destiny in between those two episodes and we never really got to see it.
Yeah.
I would have loved to get to see it, to see how he came to Onderon, to see what other mistakes he made, to see what other processes that he went on to find himself. That's just me, though.
Yeah, I would have loved that as well, kind of. Because his process, we don't really see a lot of it. We just see, him kind of acting crazy.
Yeah. That is definitely what we see. I think that's everything I have. Do you have more stuff?
No, I'm good.
Okay. What are your overall thoughts about this episode?
Overall, I think this is a very solid episode. I think it has a lot of cool messages, and I like it for that. But I think that it does have some problems or some head scratchers. Yeah, overall, I think it's good.
So a little context. I was doing a Clone Wars rewatch a few months ago, and I didn't take a second look at this episode. But when I saw it a few months ago, I'm like, wow, this is really good. And then I'm like, wait, who directed this episode? And then the title card came up, directed by Dave Filoni. And then I said to myself, oh, I see. I thought this episode was incredible. Again, as I said before, I view it as an evolution of Trespass. In the same way that in Rebels, Fight or Flight and Flight of the Defender from seasons 1 and 4 are basically two versions of the same episode. I feel like Trespass and A Friend in Need are two versions in the same episode. But both times, one is the more kid-centric, less mature version of what's going on, that still has those themes, but you gotta look. And then the other one is to show how the same story can still play out, but the characters have changed now.
Yeah.
And how that works for the characters.
I would argue that in terms of comparing the two episodes, it's also about showing how much the characters have developed to see how they handle and respond to two similar situations, maybe very differently, and maybe their role is very different.
Yeah.
because
I
of
find that
how they've grown and changed.
I find that Ahsoka's role in this episode, compared to Anakin and Obi-Wan's role in Trespass, is a lot more nuanced. Like, Obi-Wan and Anakin just are like, so yeah, you guys gotta stop fighting.
Yeah.
And Ahsoka is actively considering all sides of the story, actively considering how Lux is feeling in this. Obi-Wan and Anakin, and I understand the situation is different, but Obi-Wan and Anakin feel a little bit more flat as characters. They feel like they have the one note that they're going on, and
Yeah.
Ahsoka feels like she's constantly developing as this episode's developing.
Yeah, definitely. I agree.
Yeah. This is, by the way, spoiler, my favorite of the 3 episodes we're going to talk about today.
I think it's a good one.
It's a very good one. Okay, should we get on to Deception?
Yeah, Deception.
Okay.
Let's do it.
In Deception, the Jedi and the Republic learn of a plot by criminal mastermind Moralo Eval to assassinate Chancellor Palpatine. Eval is allying with separatist forces and other bounty hunters to carry out this deed, and the Jedi decide that they're going to do something about it. So what they do is they have a sniper kill, in air quotes, Obi-Wan on a regular scouting with him, Anakin, and Ahsoka. Obi-Wan is dead to the world when his body falls, but of course, as we know, because, the rest of the Clone Wars and A New Hope have to happen, Obi-Wan's still alive. They faked his death so that they could plant him as the sniper that killed him, Reiko Hardeen, and try to find out what Eval's up to. This plan indeed works. Obi-Wan as Hardeen finds Eval and his new associate, bounty hunter Cad Bane, and they escape from prison, Republic prison, in a prison riot, and get away en route to Nal Hutta, where the next episode begins. Okay, so the fortune cookie of this episode: all warfare is based on deception. Before we analyze this at all, I gotta say, I know I've mentioned this before, I hate when they use the name of an episode in the fortune cookie. It feels lazy to me. That's just me, though. What do you think about this fortune cookie? All warfare is based on deception.
I think they could have come up with their own. Thank you, Sun Tzu. But this is Star Wars. But
wait, it's a Sun Tzu quote?
Yeah, all warfare is based on deception.
I didn't realize it was a Sun Tzu quote. Good call.
It's like one of his most famous quotes. But yeah, I mean, I think it's very true. I think it's true on multiple levels. And we can see in this episode, obviously, there's a deception, but also the entire Clone Wars is deception. In terms of Palpatine, trying to secretly planning all his crazy machinations. So I think it kind of, in that way, it is definitely true in more ways than one, I would say. What did you think?
I thought it was fun. I didn't think of that deeper meaning, and I'm glad you caught that. This whole thing with the deception, the initial act of Obi-Wan dying and becoming Hardeen was, in my opinion, and I love this arc, a little too purposefully engineered to drive a further wedge between Anakin and the Jedi. I understand that that's part of this show's goal, but there are a couple of opportunities where I do feel like Anakin could have been notified about what happened and still not jeopardize the mission. Instead, he is not notified, puts both his and Obi-Wan's life in danger, and drives and slips closer to the dark side. And I'm not just talking about this episode, I'm talking about the next episode as well. I just think it's a little too convenient. But that's just me.
Yeah, I definitely think it could have been. The Jedi definitely took a bit of a heavy-handed approach and didn't really consider all the consequences. And as Obi-Wan says, like, yes, it was Anakin's death that sold, or it was Anakin's reaction that sold the fake death.
Yeah.
But if Anakin's already reacted, why not then put
then just tell him? Yeah.
Because like this is Anakin. He's a wild card. There's probably like a 50% chance that Anakin would have just seen Obi-Wan die and then go psycho and like single-handedly capture Dooku and like kill the entire Separatist commanders. So the entire Separatist Council. I mean, so like they definitely could have thought this one through a little more, I would say.
Yeah,
didn't quite do it the right way. But obviously, it does show the overall theme of the Jedi Council doesn't really trust Anakin, and that damages Anakin, and that is difficult for Anakin, and that allows Palpatine to kind of sneak in there and
absolutely
kind of supplant the Jedi Council as the number one thing that Anakin trusts, aside from Padme.
Yeah, of course. I will say this is just me. First of all, I want to acknowledge this before I get to that. Putting Satine at Obi-Wan's funeral was harsh.
Yeah,
that hit me.
Again, they had to sell it.
They had to sell it, but they animated Satine and put her there, sobbing. Yeah.
I mean, they didn't hold back.
I know, they did not hold back. Okay. I don't know about you. The scene from when Hardeen steps into the bar to when Obi-Wan completes the transformation. I don't know what the dialogue was in that scene, but I hated a lot of it. Hate is a strong word. I disliked a lot of it.
One of the first things was that I'd like to test his midichlorian count.
I actually love that line. That's an exception. I love that line.
His blood? That's weird.
I know. It's so weird, but I love it so much. But then the line, killing a Jedi was the best move we had. I'm like, you could have revealed that 6,000 ways, and you chose killing a Jedi was the best move we had.
Yeah.
That's a really weird way of introducing it, but that's just me.
Yeah, maybe it was a bit.
Yeah.
Maybe it wasn't the greatest. I don't know. I thought it was okay.
I also thought there was this one that this is just another thing and again, these sound like major critiques. These only tick me off a little bit. Eval killed his mother when he was only a boy. Told the authorities he did it because he was bored. They use that line way too much. Every time there's an opportunity to talk to Moralo Eval, it feels like they're going back to that line.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I just feel
like definitely trying to play up the fact that ooh, he's a psycho. He's wilding out, And
it's the thing, and I'm sure we'll get to this next episode when we'll talk about the final two episodes. Eval is built up to be such a threat,
and he's really not.
What does he actually do?
Like I think OC Sobek probably has more credibility than Eval.
OC Sobek has a million times more credibility than Moralo Eval. Absolutely. And they even reference it in the story itself. When they knock down Eval into the box in the box episode. And Hardeen absolutely wrecks him. I mean Obi-Wan, but it's not even a contest really.
Yeah.
I mean, he designed the box. Whoop-de-doo. It kills about 10 bounty hunters. Cool prank, bro. Whatever.
Yeah.
It does seem a little strange. Yeah. I will say this, though. I love this transformation sequence. The transformation sequence from Obi-Wan, ignoring the dialogue, but the actual how they do it with that droid and they punch things in Obi-Wan's face and they make him swallow the rope. That's so weird and so incredibly Star Wars.
Yeah.
it
Very creepy.
feels so Star Wars to me, and I love it. Yeah.
100%.
What do you think about the first parts of these episodes from when Obi-Wan dies to the transformation?
I think it's good. Very, very intense, very, very emotionally intense. They really sell it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. I think it's great. I do think the idea of Obi-Wan faking his death is a little weird. And it's one of those things that, in the bigger picture, I struggle to wrap my head around. Like, wait, this happens. Like, thinking about, oh wait, this happens in the same universe in the time frame with Attack of the Clones, with Revenge of the Sith. Like, I think the one of the main problems in general, I think, with the Clone Wars, it's kind of a minor problem, but it is a problem, is kind of really rationalizing that, like, all this stuff really happened, like, in between Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith. But you know,
is that not a problem? Just wonder, is that not a problem you have with all the animated shows? Or is it the Clone Wars specifically?
I think it's the Clone Wars specifically, just because of the time frame and some of the things that are said. Like, you know, my powers have doubled since the last time we met, and just kind of...
That was a month ago, Anakin.
Yeah. If that. A month tops. But, like, that kind of thing, to me, yeah, I'd say that's not so much a problem with Rebels. Simply because of the time frame, and it's not really all the same characters.
Yeah, I understand. There are less familiar characters in Rebels, so
not as many familiar faces.
Yeah, and Resistance as well, and Mandalorian. Yeah, the Clone Wars is easily the one with the most familiar faces. I'll give it that. Yeah. A couple of minor things. Moving on. What is it with Moralo Eval and referring to himself in the third person?
Yeah, honestly.
He just randomly does it. That's the thing. They build up, and I know we already talked about this, they build up Eval to be so threatening. They have him do all these threatening things. They have him say all these threatening things. Oh, Moralo Eval will have you slaughtered.
Yeah.
But it's all flash, no bang. Where's this actual evidence to do anything? Anything that he could have done in this entire arc is done by Cad Bane or Obi-Wan.
Yeah, definitely. There are some characters like that in Star Wars. That is a recurring problem at times. Just kind of the bark versus the bite.
Yeah,
Moralo Eval, definitely one of the more egregious examples of it, I would say.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It didn't really bug me that much. It kind of, I feel like it makes sense. It makes sense for his character almost, that, like, maybe he's built up this whole reputation, but, you know, maybe he's gotten a little too comfortable. Maybe he's gotten a little too soft, you know. Maybe he's letting his reputation do the talking a little bit too much.
Yeah. I agree with you. I think that
it's easy to rationalize for me. It doesn't really bug me.
Yeah, you can rationalize it. For me, I just feel like it's what the episode tells us versus what the episode shows us.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
It tell us Moralo Eval, super threatening, scary guy, and shows us guy who says very scary things, but never actually does anything. There is a line where Count Dooku says to him in the box, "Show us what you're made of, Eval." That's how far they take it.
I was just like, well, I guess I'm made of baloney. He doesn't really, yeah. And that kind of, I think that kind of, though, to me, kind of makes it better, because it's actually in universe acknowledging what's happening, like acknowledging that, you know, he talks a lot of big game, but he doesn't really have the chops anymore. Like, he's not, or maybe, like, he talks a lot of big game, but he can't actually hang with, like, Bane and Dooku, and he's not actually a big league player, you know?
Yeah.
So I think that Dooku calling him out kind of helps rectify the problem by making it an aspect of his character rather than just a problem of the story. But I definitely agree with you that in this episode, it can feel a little odd at times.
Yeah. There's another thing I want to mention about this. Obi-Wan says on a call with Yoda and Mace Windu, I'm starting to enjoy playing the villain. And of course, it's a little sarcastic, one-liner sort of thing. But I would have loved to explore that more. There's one thread in this arc that I really wanted to see that we did not get, which is that Obi-Wan is disguising himself as somebody who does despicable things.
Yes.
For a while, Obi-Wan Kenobi is dead.
Yeah.
Like,
there's only Moralo Eval.
There's only Reiko Hardeen.
Reiko Hardeen, sorry.
Yeah,
Reiko Hardeen.
There's only Reiko Hardeen. And I wanted to see a little bit more if part of Obi-Wan became Reiko a little bit.
I would say definitely not.
I mean, of course
because,
not, because, yeah.
It's like, really, like, what helped Cad, the reason that Cadmain, like, figured it out, in my opinion, was because that Obi-Wan wasn't being, like, mean like someone like Hardeen would be, you know? He didn't really, like, he was playing his part, but he didn't quite have the same mean spirit of a villain, really, and I think that's, you know, like when I'm not sure if I can't remember if that's in this episode or next, but you know, when Obi-Wan is forced to kill the clone guard, and Bane's like, "What's wrong with you, Hardy?" And he's like, "Oh, my gun jammed.
My blaster jammed." Yeah, that's this episode.
Blaster jammed. But yeah, it's the little things like that I think show that Obi-Wan is still kind of,
he's still there somewhere.
He's still there. Yeah, I think in a way this also does show kind of the decline of the Jedi overall. You know, the questionable nature of a lot of the things that Obi-Wan is doing, and the questionable nature of the very way that Obi-Wan's faking his death and kind of putting that on Anakin without letting him know. And I think that does give rise to the question of, like, do the ends justify the means for the Jedi? You know, is it changed by the fact that they're trying to save the Chancellor? And I think what it really comes down to is, you know, are the Jedi, are they categorical or consequentialist in their morality? And I'd say that over the course of the Clone Wars and over the course of this time period, the Jedi become more and more consequentialist, or they're like, okay, we're going to do this thing, and maybe it's not good, but, you know, the ends justify the means, and we're doing this to avoid this. Whereas by default, I think the Jedi, you know, they have their code. Like, no, we can't do that because that's against the code. That would be immoral.
Yeah.
So I think we kind of see that shift, and this exemplifies that shift.
Yeah. I do think there's that, there's that line from Lair of Grievous that we mention all the time. In a war, a danger there is of losing who we are.
Oneself.
Yeah. And, you know, what are you willing to do? How far are you willing to go to get there? That's very exemplified by the Jedi throughout the Clone Wars, but in this arc as well, you know. Was it worth it? And Obi-Wan, to his credit, kills not a single person in this entire arc.
Wow.
But you could argue that Obi-Wan is complicit in other deaths. You know, because Bane was there, because doing his thing, because Eval was there doing his thing, because eventually Embo and, you know, Daron will be there doing their things. And of course you can make the argument about blowing cover and all that kind of stuff. But the point is, Obi-Wan was standing there and deaths were occurring.
Yeah, and he kind of stood by and let them happen because he needed to not blow his cover. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's definitely complicit in a lot of bad stuff in this.
Yeah.
He's not complicit by choice. Like, he's not complicit because he wants to be.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, like, he's a Jedi. He's a Jedi Knight, and he's standing by, letting evil happen.
Yeah.
In service of a greater cause, I guess, or like in service of another cause.
And it hurts so much more when you realize that Palpatine's orchestrating this whole arc, like every other arc of the Clone Wars.
He's demoralizing.
In service of the grand plan.
Yeah, he's like purposefully using this to demoralize. And I think that makes it even cooler in some ways, and even more compelling to me.
It makes it compelling, but it also, a little bit for me, devalues what Obi-Wan's doing. Because you know that he's not actually servicing that great a cause, but he doesn't know he's not actually servicing a great cause. It's this weird catch-22.
To me, it doesn't really... Personally, I feel like it doesn't really undermine a moral dilemma because he doesn't know.
Yeah.
So I feel like it doesn't really change much to me.
I don't think it I think I misspoke there. I don't think it devalues it. I just think it adds a weird undercurrent to it that I wasn't expecting this far around. But okay.
Yeah, probably.
What do you think of this episode overall?
Overall, I quite liked it. I thought the idea of having Obi-Wan fake his death felt inherently a bit strange, but I liked it. I thought they executed it. They executed it well.
This arc is probably one of the ones I've seen the most. So I guess I've just accepted it by now. It's like, Obi-Wan fakes his death. That's just what he does. But yeah. I can see how the decision might seem strange to some people. But yeah, I love this episode. Some of the expository dialogue didn't sit well with me, but that's like the biggest complaint I have with this episode. Want to get on to Friends and Enemies?
Yeah, let's do it.
In Friends and Enemies, Obi-Wan, disguised as Rachel Hardeen, Cad Bane, and Moralo Eval land on the planet of Nal Hutta. They crash land, and their goal is to get supplies and get out of there. Does that go well for them? No, of course it doesn't, because why would it? They land on the planet, they threaten the owner of a pawn shop, Pablo, and then eventually there's some other mayhem ensues, and just as they're about to leave on a ship to escape Nal Hutta, they are apprehended by Pablo and authorities of the Hutts who rule Nal Hutta, and Cad Bane sprays some like pepper spray or something similar to that in Obi-Wan's face, and the Star Wars equivalent of pepper spray in Obi-Wan's face, and leads him to be arrested by the Hutts while Bane and Eval escape. Obi-Wan had previously placed a tracking device on their ship, so he tells the Hutts where it is in exchange for his release, which is not given to him, it's taken by him. And the Hutts shoot their ship down. And then Anakin gets a tip-off from Palpatine that they were headed towards Nal Hutta, so they chase them on a wild bantha chase to a moon of Nal Hutta. Actually, I don't know if it's a moon. It's a nearby planet where Anakin and Ahsoka attack Cad Bane, Rachel Hardeen, or Obi-Wan disguised as Rachel Hardeen, and Moralo Eval. They manage to escape knocking out Anakin, but not before Anakin realizes that Obi-Wan somehow is still alive. Fortune cookie is: keep your friends close, but keep your enemies closer. The classic piece of advice. It's of course seen in this episode where what Obi-Wan does to gain the begrudging but still trust of Eval and Bane.
Yeah.
What do you think of that?
First off, I think we've completed it's very rare. We've gone 3 for 3 this episode with unoriginal fortune cookies.
Really?
Yes.
I really like the.
I'm not saying they're not good or not applicable, some of them, but none of them are. Or I should say, maybe all of them are easily. All of them are easily attributed to like common sayings or to some specific quotes.
Oh, interesting.
Rather than at the very least being obscure enough to pass for original.
Yeah, because I quite like the friend in need one, but I agree with you that this is only okay.
Yeah. That's not to say it's necessarily bad, but yeah, it's not quite.
It's not original.
Yeah, it's not quite that original. But I think obviously, yeah, Obi-Wan has to keep Cad Bane very close, and that proves to be a problem for him. And for Cad Bane, Cad Bane kind of keeps no one close. He's very, very standoffish. He's very testy. He's a menace. He's not very friendly to anyone.
As we see in the Bad Batch very recently. You've watched this episode, I'm pretty sure.
Yes,
so,
yes, I have.
You know, the way he treats Toto, his own droid, is still not that great.
Loved. In a way, yeah, the enemies are even being kept closer than the friends. How like Anakin doesn't even know that Obi-Wan's alive, and the fact that the council chooses not to divulge that information, it kind of comes back to bite them in the butt a little bit, I'd say. As Anakin, you know, tries to hunt down Hardeen and ends up almost kind of blowing the mission.
Yep.
But you know, I mean, can you really blame him? Like, he thought Obi-Wan was dead.
No, absolutely. I'm not blaming Anakin for this. I'm blaming the council for this fully.
Yeah, council kind of messed that one up.
So here's a weird thing I wanted to tell you about this episode before we go into depth about it. I have a weird past with this episode. My experience with this arc of the Clone Wars was a 3-episode arc: Deception, The Box, and Crisis on Naboo.
Yeah,
I did not go back to watch Friends and Enemies until a lot later. I don't know why it was, but this episode, even though it's not at all bad, I just feel like this episode is very unnecessary. I feel like if they added a few more little things to Deception and The Box, this could have been a 3-episode arc of those 3.
Yeah. I think it's kind of cool that we get to, you know, just in general learn a little bit more about Cad Bane, get to know him a little more.
Yeah.
Because I think he's a very cool character. But yeah, it definitely isn't like the number 1 episode in terms of plot importance, but you know, I still think it serves its purpose terms of showing Anakin's response to it, and kind of, you know, what happens when like maybe things aren't 100% okay between Obi-Wan and Anakin. Like, what then, you know?
Yeah. The biggest strength of this episode is what it does to develop the characters. In my opinion, the biggest weakness, in my opinion, is, as I said before, there's nothing that happens this episode, at least for me, that I feel like directly affects the other 2 episodes.
Interesting.
I mean, look, the biggest thing that probably affects the next 2 episodes is that Bane has seen how resourceful Rhaegar Hardeen is and trusts him a little more in The Box than Crisis on Naboo. Although not really, because he says in Crisis on Naboo, "I'm keeping my eye on all of them." But that's just a wary Cad Bane thing. But I
think Cad Bane, personally, my headcanon is that Cad Bane knows. Like, he knows that Hardeen is an imposter, but he can't let on that he knows, or things could get ugly.
I'm not convinced of that because of a line he says in Crisis on Naboo. "Kenobi! I should have known!" Like, that reaction was too genuine to be fake.
Yeah. Or, like, I forgot about that line, to be fair, so maybe, like, I feel like, at the very least, he has to suspect something, you know?
I actually agree with that idea that he might suspect something. I'm not sure that he knows, though.
Yeah, maybe that's definitely more likely, actually, given the line. But yeah, like, you know, Cad Bane, he's no fool.
No, he's no fool. Absolutely not. Then again, this plot was very meticulously crafted.
100%.
Yeah. You wanna talk about this conversation? I really love this conversation. The conversation between Anakin and Palpatine.
Yeah, I didn't have a ton of thoughts about it. Do you want to maybe start lead us off?
I love it so much. It it's so great. You look troubled, Anakin. It is possible, he's referring to Jedi Council, it is possible that they do not trust you to control your feelings. In
He's
Revenge of the Sith, Palpatine says to Anakin, they don't trust you, Anakin. It's one of the best things about this arc, in my opinion, is how Palpatine's string pulling becomes way more methodical. It's less about boosting Anakin's ego and lowering his opinion of the Jedi, and more about pointing out exactly where Anakin's doing it wrong and how he could have it better.
Yeah.
It's haunting.
It's so good. It really just shows how much he's thought everything out.
Absolutely. I said in my notes, the best plan in this episode is not the Jedi Council's plan, and it's not Moralo Eval's plan. It's Palpatine's plan.
Oh yeah, 100%.
And I love it that Palpatine and the Jedi are arguing about whose plan is better, but Palpatine knows that his plan beats both of them in a landslide. So he can relax and breathe easy. I also love this. You cannot deny your feelings, Anakin. They are what makes you special. And then let's flash back to Attack of the Clones. I continue to say that you are one of the most gifted Jedi I have ever met. Watch what he does with that strategy.
He gives Anakin the special attention and the praise that Anakin emotionally craves and needs.
But special among who? The Jedi. So what he's doing is he is backhandedly saying, Anakin, you're better than them.
Oh yeah.
You can do so much better than them. Your emotion is what makes you special, Anakin. The other Jedi never feel anything, and that's holding them back. But you, my boy, you are the one who has discovered the secret.
Yeah.
And that makes you better than them. It's a very tricky strategy, and it's crazy. I love it so much. It's and watch Anakin's actions this episode. When the bartender doesn't tell him information about Hardeen and his associates, he force chokes him. Is there any other time before this that Anakin force chokes somebody except for that time in Brand Invaders when he force chokes Poggle the Lesser? Because I can't think of anything.
Yeah, I would guess that there's probably not I don't know.
It's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, it gets crazy in this.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see. Oh, and speaking of also, Palpatine tells Yoda and Mace, I suggest you have more faith in young Skywalker. He's done his tricks on Anakin. Now he's manipulating the Council to be more against Anakin so that the wedge widens. It's ingenious.
Yeah, it's so great. It's really great.
It's awesome. Do you have anything about the first half of this episode?
Not really. I think it's very good.
Yeah. Let's see. What is, so there's this catch-22 at the end of the episode. And it's this weird one, because you know that Anakin and Ahsoka cannot kill Obi-Wan. because Obi-Wan will remain alive for the rest of the war, of course.
Yeah.
You also know that nothing can happen to Ahsoka or Anakin. So we have this weird thing where you know a confrontation is coming, but you know that no side can do anything real to the other. Yoda has that line, kill Hardeen, Skywalker might, or die trying, he may.
Yeah.
And, it's like, it's ridiculous that Yoda just, and I love Yoda, it's ridiculous that Yoda figures this out just now.
Yeah.
Like,
you could say that about a lot of things in the Clone Wars, though, to be fair.
Yeah, it's just, it's really interesting. Like, I figured out things in this episode faster than Yoda did.
Yeah.
I mean, I have the added foresight of having seen this arc a few times, but, like, still, I figured things out before Yoda did. That's not me bragging, that's me shaming my favorite Star Wars character a little bit for his incompetence. I will say this, hearing Obi-Wan say Anakin in Rachel Hardeen's voice during that final fight is, like, heartbreaking.
Yeah, absolutely.
It reminds me of, I need somebody, and I might do it myself, to edit a sequence of Reiko's voice saying Anakin and Vader's voice saying Ahsoka in Twilight of the Apprentice.
Yeah.
Done. That's the same moment. It's great.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Anything else for the episode?
Nope, I think you covered it.
Okay. What do you think overall about Friends and Enemies?
I like it. I think it's another good episode. Very solid. Yeah, I think it could. Yeah, I don't know. It could have had a little more build up, but I really liked it. I was pretty blown away by some of the stuff that happened, and the intensity that it reached. Like, even though you knew that all the characters had to stay alive, or the ones that mattered, they still managed to really make it hit, which I thought was very cool.
Yeah. I guess I'll say this about this episode. Again, I will say that the true trilogy of this is Deception, Box, Crisis on Naboo. And this episode feels extremely... It feels forced in there a little bit to me. Maybe that's because I saw it after the other three, but yeah. And like, I can't help but wonder what a better use for this episode could be. That's my main complaint with this episode is, what things could they have done that they didn't do? They could have talked about, the general, what's that word? The general dissonance between Obi-Wan and Hardeen, and those and those personalities of and those personalities they're interacting with in Obi-Wan right now. They could have done stuff about, like, explored more of Cad Bane's character. They could have explored Eval a little bit more. This is what it feels like. It feels like this episode's treading water a little bit.
Mm.
But that's just me. Yeah. What would be your ranking for these three?
I would say number one, Deception. Actually, no. Number one, A Friend in Need. Number two, Friends and Enemies. Number three, Deception. But I thought they were all very close. Yeah.
Mine would be number one, A Friend in Need. Number two, Deception. Number three, Friends and Enemies. So the order in which we watched them. Yeah, I thought these were three pretty solid episodes. Friends and Enemies, of course, being my least favorite of the three. But again, there was nothing bad about the episode. There were lack of things that made me think this episode was good, in my opinion. Okay. Is that it? Or are we gonna go on to everybody's favorite part of Star Wars in the Galaxy?
I think we can.
Okay, it's time for everybody's favorite part of Star Wars in the Galaxy.
What you've brought me today is worth 1 quarter.
Yes.
1/4 portion. The segment of the show where we do something a little bit different. This week we have This Month, where we talk about what Star Wars we've enjoyed the most this month. Jacob, you want to start or do you want me to start?
You go for it. You start. Lead us off.
I would say I'm going to nominate for my This Month. I'm going to go with the final 2 episodes of Star Wars The Bad Batch Season 1. Have you still not seen it?
I have not seen them.
I will provide no spoilers.
I've been pretty much living under a rock.
We're
in terms
good.
Of new content for the past couple months.
I will say this about the last 2 episodes of The Bad Batch. If you know, you know. These 2 episodes have some emotional reveals, some interesting developments within the characters, some great moments, and I can't wait for season 2. So, yeah. Jacob, what's your This Month?
My This Month is Thrawn Ascendancy, Chaos Rising. That's the first one, right? Make sure I'm getting it right.
Yep.
Yeah. I just finished that book. I loved it. It was a little bit hard to get into for me. I'm reading it for some reason. I experienced severe name fatigue. I was having a very difficult time keeping everyone straight in my mind. But I'm glad that I did. It was really good. I loved, getting to see that backstory for Thrawn, getting to see a little bit more inside the Chiss Ascendancy, how they're handling that with the canon. I absolutely loved all the twists and turns, and I really liked kind of getting to know Fallius and the system of the caretakers for the Skywalkers. And I really thought that they did some cool things, digging into that. What is it like to be a Skywalker? The feelings of obsolescence, maybe, and like all the pressure that puts you under, and then also all the political, the infighting, the wheeling and dealing. I thought that was all very cool. So
yeah,
I enjoyed it.
I'm very interested to check that book out when I get around
Thoroughly enjoyable.
Yeah. Okay, I think that is going to be it for this episode of Star Wars in a Galaxy. Thank you so much for listening. Next episode, next week, not next week, next episode, because it's going to be in 2 weeks. Next episode, we are going to be talking about, we're going to be finishing that arc, the box and Crisis on Naboo. We're also going to be talking about the standalone episode, Massacre. It's actually not a standalone episode. It ties into an arc that we'll get into the following episode, but that's what's going on. In the meantime, if you have not already, you can, of course, follow us and listen to us on Anchor, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, anywhere you listen to podcasts, we'll be there. Follow us on Twitter at InAGalaxyPod, Instagram at Star Wars in a Galaxy. Check out our YouTube channel, Star Wars in a Galaxy. You can email us with all your questions and hot takes. We love hearing from listeners at swinagalaxy@gmail.com. Is there anything else? I don't think so. I'll just mention again, the next episode will premiere in 2 weeks. That will be September 8th will be the next premiere date. And in the meantime, may the Force be with you always.